Your Excellency, the Commissioner, my brothers and sisters from the United Nations and from the AfCFTA Secretariat, Excellencies, Ministers, Ambassadors, friends, since this is an AU meeting, I guess we need to say good morning, bonjour, bon dia, buenos dias, sabah al khair, and hamjambo. I think, are there any other languages not so far approved? I think that's it. Thank you so much for this invitation to join your discussions today on the AfCFTA Implementation Strategies and peer learning. I'm very honored to be part of these discussions, just as I am very honored to be the United Nations resident coordinator in a country, Kenya, that is, I think, an African champion on integrating markets on the continent. And so my remarks will be largely, if you'll forgive me, a little bit partisan, a little bit nationalist, a little bit Kenya focused this morning. But Kenya is, I think, amongst the leading member states within the African Union that have taken a role on advancing regional and continental integration. Of course, Kenya's presidency, recent presidency of the East African Community being one shining example of that. Kenya, as I'm sure you know, was amongst the first of the African Union member states to sign, ratify, and deposit the instruments of ratification of the AfCFTA agreement. And of course, we had been hoping to hear from my good sister and friend Nardos Bekele Thomas this morning, who was my predecessor as resident coordinator here. So lots of connectivity. Great deal has been said by the previous two speakers about the importance of integrating African markets. I needn't dwell on that. You are all far greater experts in that area than I am. But I think it is very noteworthy that the continent is now making enormous strides to realizing that incredible potential that exists when you integrate markets across the 54, when you realize the promise of horizontal trade, vertical trade from Africa to the rest of the world, we know has been increasing by leaps and bounds. But this is the second frontier that we need together to help Africa realize so that she can take her rightful place at the global table in this 21st century. Since we're here to strengthen a peer learning community, maybe I can just highlight a few of the concrete steps that Kenya has taken. And maybe these examples can provide some inspiration and kickstart discussions. So, Kenya is one of many countries that has launched a national free trade agreement implementation strategy. It did so in August 2022. That obviously tries to foreground the benefits that Kenya herself can realize from the free trade area, expansion of Kenya's trade and investment in Africa. That already accounts for about 40% of Kenya's total exports. We hope it can support structural transformation and foster faster economic growth and sustainable development. The Kenya strategy has a very strong emphasis on youth. Here we speak of the 35 million under 35 in Kenya. Something like 70% of the population. And Kenya's youth are synonymous with innovation in business, in investment. They're using technology. We just heard from Jide the importance of the digital transformation, the digital economy, and digital integration across this great continent. Kenya is also one of the 8 countries that were selected to participate in the AfCFTA Guided Trade Initiative, which seeks to test the operational, institutional, legal, and trade policy environment under the free trade area. And it does this by facilitating trade amongst interested AfCFTA state parties that have met the minimum requirements. So that, for example, has led Kenya and Ghana to partner around micro, small, and medium enterprises through an exhibition in May 2023, as well as the launch of common operations. It's led to the establishment of the Ghana Trade House in Kenya, supported by UNDP offices in both countries. And I'm certain that the conference can benefit from Kenya's experience under the Guided Trade Initiative. And I suppose a little bit impiously and a bit nationalistically, I want to hope that Just as there is a Ghana trade house in Kenya, there either is or will soon be a Kenya trade house in Ghana. That seems to me to be fair. Kenya is championing the free movement of persons on the African continent. At the Youth Connect Summit late last year here, President Ruto gave a foreshadowing of his eradication of visas for all travelers across the continent. I very much hope all of you traveling to here were able to benefit from that. I'd love to hear over coffee about your experience with it, to hear how it's going. But I think it's a historic move, and one that, again, can really take us in that direction of maximizing the opportunity for horizontal cooperation, horizontal trade, horizontal development within the African continent. And finally, Kenya is demonstrating how AfCFTA aspirations can contribute to national development priorities and leaving no one behind. So in President Ruto's bottom-up economic transformation agenda that he launched last year, the opportunity to maximize trade and cooperation and development through the free trade area is very much written in to what is known as the BETA, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. There are 7 prioritized value chains across agriculture and livestock, blue economy, mining, manufacturing, and all of these intended to help Kenya maximize her exports and to create employment for that young Kenyan population I was talking about before. So as I begin to wind up, friends, excellencies, I'm certain that Kenya will continue to promote the AfCFTA strategy from within, but will also continue to exert leadership around these important areas on the continent. From the United Nations perspective, oh, I beg your pardon, sorry, a little bit higher, that would have been better, wouldn't it? From the United Nations perspective, just to conclude by pointing out how important we see the free trade area to Kenya and countries like Kenya, to the African continent, and to the journey towards the Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union Agenda 2063. Fully integrating the continent is integral to that challenge. And the converse is also true. If we fail to maximize that opportunity to knit the continent together economically, then we will fail the Sustainable Development Agenda. That much seems to me to be very clear, and we will therefore leave large parts of the continent behind, and we will leave large populations within large parts of the continent behind. We don't want to do either of those. So as I conclude, let me exhort you to make the most of these 3 days. Let's really have a peer learning. When we talk of peer learning, horizontal is also the adjective that we want. We want to be learning from member state to member state, pooling our experiences, what's working, where are we stuck, how can we do better? And we in the United Nations here in Kenya and across the continent are with you to help you with that. So, asanteni sana. Thank you very, very much, and good luck with the deliberations.